What if the fate of our planet could be revealed, not in words or data tables, but in a single hypnotic spiral, a shape that silently shows how Earth's climate is slipping away from what we once knew? Chapter 1. The birth of the spiral. Imagine staring at a simple animation, just lines curving outward in a spiral. At first, it looks harmless, even beautiful. But as the spiral grows, something begins to feel unsettling. Each curve represents time, each outward movement represents temperature rising, and suddenly you realize you're not just looking at colors and shapes, you're looking at the story of Earth itself, unfolding in silence. This strange yet powerful image is called the climate spiral. It first appeared in 2016, created by climate scientist Ed Hawkins. At the time, Hawkins was searching for a way to make climate data easier to understand. Charts and tables had existed for decades, but most people simply glanced at them and moved on. Data is cold, numbers feel distant. The danger, however, was anything but distant. He wanted to create something that couldn't be ignored, something people could feel, and so the spiral was born. When Hawkins first shared it online, no one expected it to explode. Within hours, the animation had been watched by millions. Within days, it had appeared on news sites across the world. And within months, it was even shown at the opening ceremony of the Olympic Games. A single moving spiral had reached more people than thousands of pages of climate reports ever could. Why did it resonate so strongly? The answer is both simple and mysterious. Our minds are drawn to patterns. We understand stories better than statistics. When we see a line moving slowly outward, looping through the years, we intuitively sense change. We feel time passing. And when that line suddenly shoots far away from the comm center, we feel alarm. We don't need to read a scientific paper. Our eyes already know the truth. At first glance, the spiral is almost hypnotic. It looks like art. Its smooth loops and glowing colors seem harmless, even peaceful. But as the years speed forward, the spiral grows faster, stretching further and further away from the safe zone. The once gentle pattern becomes jagged, urgent, even chaotic. What began as a soothing image quickly turns into a warning you cannot unsee. That is the genius of the climate spiral. It doesn't shout. It doesn't scare with words. It doesn't blame. It simply shows. And yet, what it shows is haunting. Every outward curve represents a year of Earth's temperature history. Every flicker of movement is a reminder that something is shifting, something that is not just in the past, but in our present and our future. When people first saw it, many described a strange feeling. They weren't reading facts, they were experiencing them. The spiral felt alive. It seemed to move with urgency, as if it were telling us, look closer, this is happening now. And it was happening. The spiral revealed a pattern stretching back to the 19th century. For much of that time, the curves were close together, circling near the center, showing a planet with stable temperatures. Small variations appeared years slightly warmer or cooler, but nothing unusual. Then, around the mid-20th century, the spiral began to expand more sharply. Each year pulled further outward, and by the end of the 20th century, the outward leap was unmistakable. The spiral was no longer circling calmly. It was racing outward into uncharted space. The timing was not random. This was the same era when human industry surged, when fossil fuels were burned on a massive scale, when greenhouse gases began filling the atmosphere at unprecedented levels. The spiral did not just show numbers. It revealed a fingerprint, a signature of change, drawn year after year, loop after loop, until the pattern became impossible to deny. For many viewers, this was their first real moment of clarity. They may have heard about climate change for years. They may have skimmed headlines or listened to debates, but the spiral made it real. It made it visible. And once you saw it, you couldn't forget it. There is something eerie about this. A simple graphic, lasting only seconds, can strike deeper than hours of discussion. It's almost as if the spiral bypasses logic and goes straight into memory. Like a warning dream you wake from, unable to shake. And yet, even in its simplicity, the spiral holds mystery. Why does a shape so elegant make us feel so uneasy? Is it because spirals in nature often represent cycles like galaxies, storms, or seashells? But this spiral doesn't return to its center. Instead, It breaks the cycle, moving outward endlessly, suggesting no way back. That break in the natural rhythm tells us something is wrong. Something has shifted. This was the brilliance of Hawkins' design. He did not invent the data. He did not exaggerate. He simply revealed the story already hidden in the numbers. And people saw, maybe for the first time, that climate change is not a distant possibility. It is a spiral, already in motion, already carrying us outward. The climate spiral became more than a visualization. It became a symbol. Scientists began using it in talks. Educators showed it in classrooms. Activists carried it on posters. And ordinary people shared it on social media, often with little explanation, because none was needed. The spiral explained itself. But of course, the spiral is only the beginning. It is the doorway into a larger conversation about Earth's cycles, its patterns, and the forces that drive them. When you watch it loop outward, you are not just seeing history, you are watching the present unravel. And the question it leaves hanging in the air is unavoidable. If the spiral keeps stretching outward, where does it end? That is where our journey begins. To truly understand what the spiral is telling us, we need to look deeper into the data it carries, the cycles of Earth it reflects, and the future it might be warning about. Because the spiral is not just a graphic, it is a mirror, showing us the path we are already on. Chapter 2: Reading the Spiral. When you first see the climate spiral, it feels like art, but behind its graceful motion lies a story written in numbers that record the changing heartbeat of our planet. To understand the spiral, we need to read it carefully, almost as if it were a secret code. The spiral begins at the center. In the late 19th century, each line represents a year. As the animation plays, the line moves outward in loops, one for each passing year. The colors shift too, from calm blues to warmer reds, showing how temperatures have changed over time. At first, the loops stay close together, circling neatly near the middle. This tells us that Earth's climate was relatively stable. Temperatures rose and fell slightly, but the rhythm remained balanced. For decades, the spiral seems calm, almost reassuring. Then, something changes. As the years pass into the 20th century, the spiral begins to stretch further outward. The calm blues fade, and orange tones appear. By the time we reach the mid-20th century, the loops are clearly larger. The line no longer hugs the center. It begins to break away, and by the time we move into the 21st century, the spiral surges outward with a speed that feels unsettling. The colors burn red. The pattern that once seemed peaceful now looks urgent. Each outward movement represents an increase in global average temperature compared to a baseline. The average from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This baseline acts like a reference point, showing us what the world once was, before large-scale industrialization. Every step away from the center is a step away from that stable past. It's important to realize that the spiral is not showing weather. Weather is chaotic, changing day to day, often unpredictable. What the spiral shows is a long-term pattern of Earth's temperature. Averaged across years and across the globe, climate moves more slowly than weather, but once it shifts, it rarely shifts back. That is why the outward curve of the spiral matters so much. It reveals a steady push, year after year, toward a warmer planet. Now, hidden within the spiral are clues about natural cycles. If you look closely, some loops dip inward slightly, showing years that were cooler than the ones before. Others bulge outward, showing years that were unusually warm. These variations reflect the rhythms of Earth itself, cycles like El Niño and La Niña. During an El Niño year, warm waters in the Pacific Ocean release extra heat into the atmosphere, nudging global temperatures upward. During a La Niña year, cooler waters helped bring them slightly down. The spiral records these shifts. But even with these ups and downs, the overall direction is unmistakable. Outward, volcanic eruptions also leave their mark. When a massive volcano erupts, it can inject ash and gases high into the atmosphere, temporarily cooling the Earth. These events appear as brief inward dips on the spiral, like scars in the pattern, yet they never last. Once the ash settles, the line resumes its outward path, pulled again by the larger trend of warming. This is the key to reading the spiral. It does not deny natural cycles. but it shows how those cycles are now layered on top of a deeper, stronger force. The natural ups and downs are still there, but they ride a rising wave that pushes the spiral outward with no sign of return. That deeper force is the increase of greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, and others released by human activity. The spiral does not name these gases. It does not point fingers, but the pattern is there, plain and undeniable. What makes the spiral so haunting is the way it compresses history. In a few seconds, we watch over a century of change unfold before our eyes. We see how long the climate remained stable, and how suddenly it shifted. We see how quickly the loops grew once industrialization spread across the globe. And we see how, in just a few decades, Earth has moved further away from its baseline than at any other point in recorded history. Another detail makes the spiral even more powerful. Around its edge, a boundary is drawn, the internationally recognized threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. This line is not arbitrary. It represents a level of warming that scientists have warned could lead to severe consequences: stronger storms, rising seas, collapsing ecosystems. As the spiral approaches this boundary, we feel a sense of tension, and when the line crosses it, the message is clear. The world has entered dangerous territory. Yet the spiral does not scream or shout. It does not argue. It simply moves, year after year, outward and outward, until we are left with a chilling thought: this is not slowing down. Each loop is faster, each outward step larger. It feels less like a cycle and more like a spiral staircase, carrying us upward to a place we do not yet understand. And here lies the mystery. Spirals in nature usually symbolize balance, like the swirl of a seashell, the eye of a storm, or the arms of a galaxy. They circle around a center, repeating their shape endlessly. But this spiral is different. It does not circle back. It does not return to the middle. It stretches outward without pause, breaking the natural rhythm we expect. That broken rhythm is what makes it feel so unsettling. It tells us we are leaving behind the familiar cycles of Earth and stepping into something new, something untested. The spiral also teaches us about perspective. If you only looked at a single year, or even a decade, the change might seem small. But when you place more than a century of data into motion, the trend becomes impossible to ignore. This is why the spiral is so effective. It compresses time into a story we can actually see. And once we see it, we cannot pretend we didn't. Reading the spiral, then, is more than understanding a graphic. It is understanding the path we are on. It is realizing that the small steps we take each year, burning fuel, cutting forests, expanding cities, are adding up into something far larger than any single action. The spiral shows us the sum of it all, etched in a line that never turns back. For some, the spiral is frightening. For others, it is motivating. For all, it is unforgettable. Because hidden in those loops is not just the story of Earth's climate. It is the story of us, what we have done, what we are doing, and what may come next. Chapter 3. The hidden story of climate data. Most of us are used to ignoring numbers. We see charts, graphs, and endless lines of statistics in the news, and our eyes glaze over. Numbers feel cold, detached, even meaningless. They don't speak to us the way stories do. But the climate spiral is different. It takes those same numbers and transforms them into something alive, something that moves, something that grows, something we cannot turn away from. Suddenly, the numbers are not just numbers anymore. They are a pattern. And this pattern tells us a story we cannot ignore. For more than a century, scientists have collected data on Earth's climate: thermometers in cities and towns, satellites orbiting high above, weather stations scattered across every continent, all feeding into a vast record of temperatures, winds, and ocean currents. At first, the records seemed ordinary. Climate appeared stable, with small fluctuations from year to year. But as time went on, the data began to change. The numbers drifted, slowly but steadily, in a direction that suggested something unusual was happening. When you put those numbers into a chart, the change is clear but still abstract. A line sloping upward on a page doesn't always move people. But when you see it arranged as a spiral, the message becomes unavoidable. Year after year, The Earth is pushing further away from the balance it once knew. What looks like just data suddenly feels like a warning written in the language of time itself. And yet, the spiral is only the surface of the story. Beneath it lie cycles, ancient rhythms that have always shaped our planet's climate. Understanding these cycles is the key to understanding why the spiral matters so much. Take the jet stream, for example. This powerful river of air, high above us, drives weather patterns across entire continents. In the past, it flowed in a fairly stable way, keeping cold and warm regions separated. But recently, data has shown that the jet stream is shifting, bending more dramatically than before. Sometimes it dives south, dragging Arctic cold into mid-latitudes. Other times it swings north, letting heat surge into the poles. These shifts create unusual weather, harsh winters in unexpected places, heat waves where they don't belong. When you connect this to the climate spiral, you begin to see the hidden story. Rising global temperatures are not just raising the average, they are changing the very rhythms of the atmosphere. Then there is polar warming. The Arctic in particular is heating faster than almost anywhere else on Earth. This phenomenon, called Arctic amplification, is reshaping ice, oceans, and even ecosystems. Data shows the Arctic spiral outward at twice the rate of the global average. Sea ice that once reflected sunlight back into space is melting, exposing darker waters that absorb more heat. This feedback loop accelerates warming further, feeding back into the jet stream and altering weather patterns far from the poles. Again, the spiral is not just numbers, it is a map of shifting forces that ripple through the entire planet. Another piece of the hidden story is something scientists call season creep. For centuries, the seasons followed familiar rhythms. Spring arrived in March or April. Autumn cooled the air by September or October. But data now reveals a subtle drift. Spring is arriving earlier. Autumn lingers longer. Flowers bloom before they should. Birds migrate before food is ready. Farmers struggle as planting seasons shift unpredictably. To many people, this feels like a small detail, something barely noticeable. But in the spiral, it becomes part of the larger truth. Earth's cycles, once steady, are slipping out of sync. The balance that humans and ecosystems have relied on for generations is beginning to unravel. This is the hidden story behind climate data. Each dataset on its own may seem technical, distant, and dry. But when you link them together, jet stream shifts, polar warming, season creep, they form a pattern. And when you place that pattern onto the spiral, you see the story clearly. Earth's systems are connected, and they are all being pulled outward by the same force. The spiral is like a fingerprint of change, stamped across every cycle of the natural world. But here is the question that lingers. What do you see when you watch the spiral stretch outward? Do you see just data, or do you see a warning written by the Earth itself? This question matters, because the answer shapes how we respond. If we dismiss it as just numbers, we might continue as if nothing is wrong. But if we recognize it as a signal, one written into the very cycles of our atmosphere and seasons, we might understand the urgency. The spiral is not shouting at us, it is whispering. But the whisper is growing louder each year. Consider this. The jet stream is like Earth's pulse. The polar regions are like its lungs, and the seasons are like its heartbeat. If all three begin to falter at once, it is no coincidence. It is a sign of a deeper shift in the planet's health. The spiral is the diagnosis, laid out in motion for us to see. And yet, there is something haunting about the spiral's silence. It does not explain itself. It does not tell us what to do. It simply shows us the truth and leaves the interpretation to us. That silence forces us to confront our own feelings. Some viewers feel fear, others feel denial, but many feel something deeper. Oh, that such a simple image could carry so much weight, or that Earth's history can be compressed into a single moving line, or that our choices, as a species, are written into that spiral, loop after loop. The hidden story of climate data is that it is not hidden at all. It has been in front of us for decades, but we did not see it, at least, not until it was arranged in a way that spoke to our instincts. The climate spiral strips away excuses. It shows that cycles are shifting, seasons are drifting, and the Earth is no longer circling calmly around its past. it is spiraling outward into a future we are only beginning to imagine. So, when you see the spiral stretch outward, what do you feel? Do you shrug and see just data, or do you see the Earth speaking its voice, subtle but steady, telling us in no uncertain terms, this is happening, this is real, this is now? Chapter 4. Why this visualization matters. Why does the climate spiral matter? After all, it is only a visualization, a clever way of arranging temperature records in a circle. The numbers are the same whether they sit in a straight line or a loop. Yet the spiral has become one of the most powerful symbols of climate change in our time. To understand why, we need to look not just at science, but at psychology, the way humans process information, and at the way visuals speak to us more deeply than raw statistics ever could. For most of history, data lived in tables and charts. Columns of numbers recorded rainfall, average temperatures, wind speed, or ocean depth. Scientists could interpret them, but the general public rarely engaged. Our minds are not built to feel numbers the way we feel images. A statistic may tell you that global temperatures have risen by 1.2 degrees Celsius since pre-industrial times. But what does that mean? Without context, the number floats in empty space. It has no weight, no urgency, no shape. Now compare that with watching a spiral spin slowly outward, decade by decade. You don't just read about rising temperatures, you see them, you feel the outward push, the drift away from balance. You notice the years where the spiral stretches suddenly further, the decades where the loops expand more quickly. The abstract becomes visible, the invisible becomes undeniable. Psychologists call this cognitive anchoring. When information is tied to a strong visual, our brains store it more effectively. We remember not just the fact, but the image associated with it. This is why maps, diagrams, and animations can shift public understanding in ways that numbers alone cannot. The climate spiral bypasses the rational filters of the brain and speaks directly to the instinctive part of us that recognizes patterns, and patterns, once seen, cannot be unseen. This is why the spiral has traveled far beyond scientific journals. It has appeared on television screens, in classrooms, at conferences, and even on the world's largest stages. In 2016, the climate spiral was displayed during the opening ceremony of the Rio Olympics, broadcast to billions of people. For a brief moment, the entire world saw Earth's changing climate unfold as an expanding circle on a massive screen. There were no equations, no jargon, no lectures, just the spiral. The message needed no translation. It has also appeared at United Nations climate talks, where leaders and negotiators confront the difficult task of turning data into policy. In those rooms, the spiral is not just a chart hit, it is a reminder. It hangs over discussions like a silent witness, showing that while words are debated, time continues to move forward. Year by year, the spiral expands. No vote, no speech, no delay can stop its outward motion. The spiral has been used in schools to teach children, in documentaries to move audiences, in social media posts to spark conversations. It has become more than a tool, it has become a symbol of a truth, too big to ignore, and too simple to misinterpret. And yet, there is something ominous about its simplicity. When leaders and scientists show the spiral, they are not just sharing data. They are showing a clock that is running out of time. Each outward curve is a second ticked away. Each loop a reminder that we are moving further from the conditions that once sustained us. Unlike a normal clock, the spiral has no alarm bell to wake us. It will not stop when the danger grows too great. It will simply continue outward, silent and unstoppable. This silence is part of its power. Charts can argue, politicians can debate, but the spiral does neither. It does not exaggerate. It does not soften. It simply shows what is. Its neutrality makes its message more haunting. It tells us, this is not opinion. This is not prediction. This is what has already happened. When displayed on the global stage, the spiral forces a confrontation. Leaders who might dismiss reports cannot dismiss the image. Citizens who doubt the science cannot deny what their eyes see. The spiral cuts through noise and politics because it is not words, it is movement. And movement captures us in a way that static numbers never could. There is also another layer. The spiral carries with it a sense of inevitability. Watching it stretch outward feels like watching a slow-motion clock. You see the path Earth is tracing, and you know it cannot reverse on its own. The longer it spins, the harder it becomes to believe that we can pull it back. This sense of inevitability is both terrifying and motivating. It reminds us that the future is not waiting patiently, it is already unfolding. Think about how people respond to disaster warnings. A percentage on a page may not stir urgency, but show a radar image of a hurricane approaching, and suddenly everyone understands. The spiral works in the same way. It is our hurricane radar for the entire planet, a visualization that translates distant numbers into immediate awareness, and awareness matters, because awareness shapes decisions. A single visualization has the power to shift minds, and minds shape policies, and policies shape the fate of ecosystems and generations. That chain begins with what we see, what we understand, and what we remember. The spiral, more than almost any other climate image, ensures that we cannot say, "We didn't know." Still, there is a question that lingers behind the spiral. If this clock is running out, what do we do with that knowledge? Do we act? Do we ignore it? Do we freeze in fear? The spiral does not answer. It only ticks forward. The answer rests with us. This is why the visualization matters so deeply. It bridges science and psychology, numbers and emotions, facts and stories. It has reached classrooms, stadiums, and negotiation halls, not because it is complex, but because it is brutally simple. The spiral is not trying to convince us with words. It is showing us a truth written in motion. And so, when you next see the spiral expanding outward, try to look at it not as a chart, but as a clock. Listen to what it is saying without words. Time is moving. The window is narrowing. The spiral does not wait. When scientists and leaders show it, they are not just showing history. They are showing us the present turning into the future, one loop at a time. They are showing us that the Earth itself is keeping time, and that clock, unlike ours, cannot be reset. Chapter 5. The Spiral and You. When we look at the climate spiral, it is tempting to think of it as something distant, something happening out there, in the atmosphere, in the abstract world of science. But the truth is more intimate. The spiral is not only a global picture, it is also a local story. Every outward curve, every widening loop, is reflected in the ground beneath your feet, in the air you breathe, in the seasons you live through. The spiral shows the Earth's rising temperatures, but behind that image are countless changes we feel in our daily lives. A curve outward is not just another data point. It can mean a longer summer, a harsher winter, or a spring that arrives weeks too early. It can mean crops that once thrived in your region now struggle to grow, or storms that come stronger and more often than before. It can mean heat waves in cities where summers used to be gentle, or floods in valleys that once stayed dry. This is why the spiral matters to you. It is not just a symbol on a screen. It is a mirror held up to the world you inhabit. Every circle in that expanding loop contains stories of shifting weather, changing rhythms, and disrupted patterns. Perhaps you have noticed them already. Perhaps you have felt that winters do not last as long, that the rains come differently than they did when you were a child, that the air carries a new weight in the hottest months. Humans are storytellers. We remember the smell of a childhood season, the taste of fruit in summer, the sound of storms at night. When those patterns change, we notice even if we cannot always name why. The spiral gives language to those changes. It says, what you are feeling is real. It is part of a larger story. And that larger story is not meant to overwhelm you. Understanding the spiral does not mean surrendering to fear. It means preparing with clarity. It means recognizing that the patterns we live by are shifting, and that we have choices about how to respond. The spiral tells us, the future is not a fixed path. It is a path in motion. And by understanding it, we can walk more carefully, more deliberately. Think of the spiral as a kind of compass. Each outward curve points us toward what is coming, but it does not dictate how we navigate. If storms grow stronger, we can build smarter shelters. If crops shift, we can adapt our farming. If heat grows harsher, we can protect the most vulnerable among us. Awareness does not erase challenge, but it gives us the power to prepare. There is also a mystery here. one that touches something deeper than science. When you watch the spiral unfold, you are not only seeing data, you are seeing time itself. Time is lived by the earth, recorded in temperature and change, and because you live on this earth, you are part of that spiral. Your life, your community, your choices, they all trace themselves inside its loops. This is why the spiral often stirs mixed emotions. For some, it is fear, the sense of something accelerating beyond our control. For others, it is a spark of hope, proof that the problem is visible, measurable, and therefore, something we can act upon. Hope and fear exist side by side, circling each other like the loops of the spiral itself. Both are valid. Both remind us that we are alive to witness this turning of history. So when you look at the spiral, try to let it speak to you not only as a global chart, but as a personal reflection. Think of the seasons you remember, the weather you have endured, the landscapes you love. Every outward stretch of the spiral is connected to those experiences. It is not abstract. It is your world, shifting in front of you. And perhaps most importantly, remember that awareness is not the end of the journey, it's the beginning. Once we understand the spiral, we cannot unsee it, but we can choose how to respond. Do we ignore it and hope the loops slow down? Or do we prepare, adapt, and act to ensure that when the spiral continues outward, we are ready for what it brings? The spiral does not answer those questions for us. It only shows us the shape of time, the trace of change. The answers are ours to give, day by day, choice by choice. And in that sense, the spiral is not only a warning, it is also an invitation to see more clearly, to care more deeply, and to live more deliberately in the present moment. If this journey through the spiral has made you think differently about our world, then let it be more than just a visualization on a screen. Let it be a reminder that the future is not something far away. It is arriving with each loop, with each season, with each decision we make. And so, as we close this story of the spiral, I leave you with a gentle invitation. If the spiral has moved you, if it has stirred thoughts of fear or hope, or both, consider sharing that feeling. Leave a like, subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of our world, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, what does the spiral make you feel, hope or fear? Because in the end, both feelings are part of the same story. Both remind us that we are alive in a time of great change, and both can guide us, if we let them, toward a future that we choose with open eyes. The spiral is more than just lines on a screen. It is a story we are all living inside. If this journey has made you see our world a little differently, consider leaving a like to let the story reach more people. Subscribe if you'd like to keep exploring mysteries like this one, and share your thoughts below. When you watch the spiral, do you feel hope or fear? Your voice becomes part of this story too.